First, I kicked you out of my presence. That didn't work. Then we send the flood to wipe the slate clean. That didn't work. And I promised to never do it again. So now we're at it again. And, humanity is in rebellion. So he says, okay, you don't want me to be your God. You don't want to take your marching orders from me. Fine. I'm going to give you what you apparently want. They're not supposed to take worship for themselves, but they do. They even seduce the Israelites. If you keep reading in Deuteronomy 32, you hit verse 17, you have the Israelites, were sacrificing to Shadim, which most English translation is translated as demons. It's kind of an unfortunate translation. Shadim is the plural of an Akkadian term, shadu, which means a territorial entity. I mean, all of these thoughts are connected. This is the tapestry of the biblical salvation story.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, man. And in today's video, Dr. Michael Heiser breaks down where the other gods and other religions come from. Myself, I've always believed that those other gods, those other deities were always demons that God gave, man over to worship. But that is just a simple explanation. And Dr. Michael Heiser takes it one step further and really breaks it down in today's video, guys. So I appreciate you being here. Let's hop into today's discussion.
The whole chapter, and I won't do it for the sake of time. You will all notice a second thing. The judges, the people who are appointed, are never called Elohim. Not once. They're also not called Elohim in other passages either. This is an invention. It is an invented view. Now, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, I recommend going to my website, thedivinecouncil.com. And you need the word "the" because somebody else owns the URL divinecouncil.com. That's not me. It's thedivinecouncil.com. On the right-hand side, there are some articles that get into this. Unfortunately, the one that I like getting into it best, I'm not able to post because of copyright. It's a journal that doesn't post there, doesn't allow me to post the information up there. I could send you the article. It's in a journal called Bible Translator. And it's I did two articles for them. One is, does Deuteronomy 32:17 presume plural Elohim? And yes, it does. Should it be translated gods? And the other one is an article about, and this is the one if the first one doesn't put you to sleep, this one will get you. The second one is an examination of the noun Elohim when it's the subject of a plural predicator. It's about a dozen times, but when it's in the mouth of a pagan, I don't worry about that. When it's not, like when David says it or the Torah says it or something like that, I focus on that. And I show that there isn't a single reference, even when Elohim is the subject of a plural verb in those instances. There isn't a single reference where the judges are called that and where you need to translate it plural. There are other indicators in the context grammatically and contextually that show that we're talking about the God of Israel then. Why is it a plural verb form? Yeah. Occasionally they do it just for grammatical agreement. Elohim's a plural noun, we give it a plural verb, but the context always dictates the translation. So again, if you're having trouble sleeping, that's the place to go. Back to
What's the name?
Go ahead.
Well, what?
The journal?
The website.
Oh, the divine, and it's DIVINE, thedivinecouncil.com. That's my website. I'll show you what it looks like here. We have time. We're not in a rush. At least I'm not, but you can read the whole chapter. He isn't a good, but on the right-hand side there, if I mark it academic or see, I have my name at the top because I need to do that because the other one I don't own. But on the right-hand side there, if I mark it academic or technical, I'm not lying to you. Okay, it'll be technical. And again, if you have trouble sleeping, there you go. but it's discussed in a few of those. So Exodus 18 really isn't a good piece of evidence for the idea. Skip that because I use the software here. Again, every occurrence of Elohim except the one to foreign gods is singular. The singular God of Israel. The men doing the judgment are never called Elohim. Again, I just threw this other slide in. It's not a description of Sinai because Psalm 82 never mentions Sinai. You can read the whole chapter. You're not going to find Sinai in there. You could put it in if you want. Okay. I mean, the lightning bolt's not going to come from heaven, although many times I wish it would. When people do this to Psalm 82, but, there you go. Now, the right view, because it's supported by the grammar and the context, is that the gods here are divine beings. Here's Psalm 82, verse 1. God has taken his place in the divine council. Amidst the gods, he holds judgment. Gods here, Elohim, here's the first God, second Elohim. They're both Elohim. I talked about this yesterday. This one is singular because the verb form that it goes with is singular. It's very obvious. Plural, and you can't be in the midst of one. Okay. Well, maybe this is like the Trinity. You can be in the midst of the Trinity, Mike. Well, good for you, because God's going to proceed in verses 2 and 5 to tell the members of the Trinity that they're corrupt and they're going to die like men.
How's that work?
That doesn't work real well. So you got to let the plurality be what it is. And we talked about the meaning of Elohim yesterday. It's just a term you would use as a writer to identify a being or an entity that is by nature disembodied and a member of the spiritual world. But I got to tell you a little story about this too. So I had published an article on, and in academia, this was somewhat controversial. Academics like to take Psalm 82 and other passages and say that Israelites initially were polytheists, and that this Psalm and Deuteronomy 32 and a few other places have Yahweh and El, or Yahweh and El Elyon, the Most High, as separate deities, and that proves, polytheism. So I wrote this paper against that view, and it got published, in a journal. And within that view, I talk about the meaning of Elohim. So I thought, that went too well. I need public humiliation. So I'm going to read this paper at the International Society of Biblical Literature conference. Actually, I had to come up with a paper so that Logos would fund my trip. And so this one's handy. Let's do that. So I went, I got to go to Edinburgh, which is where this particular meeting was. It took my wife along. It was a real nice trip. But I have to read this paper. So I'm in the room. And again, if you've read any of my stuff or if you read Israelite Religion, this name's going to be familiar. So we're about ready to start. And in walks Nicholas Wyatt. He's a professor at Edinburgh. He's retired now. He's a big Ugaritic scholar in Israelite religion. I watched him come in, and I'm thinking, this could go really badly. So what's going to happen? And my wife's there in the front row, and Wyatt goes to the back as most of the seats are taken. So I'm into this paper. And when I got to the point about, the reason we have this is, Elohim is just a term you would use for an entity that was disembodied and a member of the spiritual world. Wyatt stands up in the back and goes, yes, finally. And it's like, what, are you going to start the wave or what? But he was so excited that somebody figured it out. And it's like, well, this could go pretty well now, But I didn't know. He hadn't done anything on it. But it was just a nice, good. And I chatted with him afterwards and thanked him for his enthusiasm. But it's, again, when you finally actually just look at the term and ask yourself, why would biblical writers use this term of 5 or 6 different things other than the God of Israel. See, because in evangelical circles, you go through this material, and I never know who's in the audience. And I don't want to say I don't care, but I used to care more than I do now. I know this creeps people out because we are taught, and our brains just move this way because we're taught by Western culture and our own Christian tradition. We are taught that the letters G, O, and D equal all these words are important, a specific set of unique attributes. Omniscience, omnipresence, eternality, sovereignty, all that stuff. We are taught that when you see the letters G, O, and D, those are, that word goes with these attributes. It's incorrect for obvious reasons. The biblical writers did not think about the word Elohim the way we are taught to think about the letters G, O, and D, because they use Elohim of different things than the God of Israel. So if Elohim is about a unique set of specific attributes, then those other Elohim have those attributes, including like the disembodied dead. I'm sorry, but like my dead aunt is not at an ontological level with the God of Israel. And no Israelite would think that, at least if they were sane, or, like they were even had a whiff of orthodoxy about them. I mean, this one, the way I summarize it is, look, you've got a lot of Elohim. It's just another way of referring to spiritual beings. That's all it is. And in the spiritual world, there's a lot of these. You got the realm of the dead. You've got, the presence of Yahweh himself, the afterlife idea. You've got the gods of the nations. You've got, Ashtaroth and Chemosh in the Hebrew text. They're called Elohim. They are not at the level of the God of Israel. And no Israelite, no biblical writer anyway, is going to think that. If you walked up to Abraham and you said, "Hey, Abraham, are there other Elohim?" He'd go, "What, duh?" And okay, good. And all the Elohim are basically the same. He'd probably just punch you in the face. Okay, Abraham does not believe we're all the same.
Exactly.
Biblical writers do not believe they're all the same. How do we know that? Because biblical writers talk about this one, Yahweh of Israel, in ways that they never talk about the other ones. You don't get that theology from the word Elohim. You get that theology from reading your Bible. Just how God is described as opposed to how the others are described. And there's a disconnect there. So Yahweh is an Elohim. There's a bunch of Elohim. Yahweh is one of them, but none of the other Elohim are Yahweh. That's what a biblical writer believed. That is not polytheism. See, we think polytheism because we're taught G, O, and D denotes a specific set of attributes. It doesn't.
That would make a lot of sense to why the writers of the Bible put it that way too, as well, because they're spiritual beings. They share access to the spiritual realm the same way God does. They once were in heaven with God until they became fallen. So it makes sense to why they share that title of Elohim, but not at the same time not also share the true title of being God. Of being God, of being Yahweh, of that status of Elohim. So it makes sense. I get what Dr. Michael S. Heiser is saying there.
It's a divine being, a supernatural being. It's a way that they would use to refer Elohim of, you're a disembodied member of the spiritual world. You're not of this world, you're of that world. So if we look at it again for what it says, you go down to verse 6. Or let me go to Psalm. Yeah, we'll hit Psalm 89. If you go down to Psalm 82, verse 6, I'll just quote it to you. Because this is the part Jesus quotes. You have God, the God of verse 1 here, addressing the other Elohim. He reams them out in verses 2 through 5. You have failed your charge. I assigned you to the nations. This is the Deuteronomy 32 worldview, because the psalm ends in a very particular way that reinforces that. You're corrupt, you're wicked, you're evil. You get down to verse 6. I said you are gods, you're Elohim, all of you, sons of the Most High. Sons is plural. But you're going to die like men. You're going to fall like any prince, or you could translate it any shining one, any, you know, any lesser being. Okay, I'm the one who has control of life and death. Okay, and I'm judging you to death. You are going to die. There's going to be a time when you cease to exist. Your existence is contingent upon my pleasure. Okay, that's the point. And then the psalm ends where the psalmist cries out, "Rise up, O God, and take the nations." Who has the nations now? It's the sons of God. It's Deuteronomy 32:8, and a whole bunch of other verses. Okay, if you've read Supernatural or Unseen Realm, this is familiar term.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's talking about the principalities, the powers, the wicked rulers in high places. That's what he's talking about there. In terms of those spiritual beings that are ruling the nations now under Satan, who is the prince of the air, unfortunately, during this current time frame that we live in. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's the sons of God. It's Deuteronomy 32:8, and a whole bunch of other verses. Okay, if you've read Supernatural or Unseen Realm, this is familiar term. God punished humanity at Babel by assigning them to the sons of God as caretakers. God divorced humanity. Said, "I'm done with you guys." This is our third go around. We've had Eden, we had Genesis 6, and then I sent the flood. First, I kicked you out of my presence. That didn't work. Then we send the flood to wipe the slate clean. That didn't work. And I promised to never do it again. So now we're at it again. And, humanity is in rebellion. So he says, okay, you don't want me to be your God. You don't want to take your marching orders from me. Fine. I'm going to give you what you apparently want. I'm going to assign you to lesser beings. This is Deuteronomy 32:8. When the Most High divided up the nations, that's a reference to Babel. That's when the nations get divided. He divided them up according to the number of the sons of God. But Israel is Yahweh's portion. Jacob is his inheritance. Because God divorces humanity en masse, assigns them to lesser beings, and they're supposed to rule according to God's rules of justice. That's what we find out in Psalm 82. That's why God's mad at them, because they don't do that. They're not supposed to take worship for themselves, but they do. They even seduce the Israelites. If you keep reading in Deuteronomy 32, you hit verse 17, you have the Israelites, were sacrificing to Shadim, which most English translations translate as demons. It's kind of an unfortunate translation. Shadim is the plural of an Akkadian term, shadu, which means a territorial entity, which makes perfect sense in the context of Deuteronomy 32, because we're talking about geography. But they seduced the Israelites into following them. That's not what God wanted. So God divorces humanity, and in what happens in the biblical story right after Babel, he calls Abraham. He says, now watch, I'm not done yet. I've kissed you guys goodbye, but not permanently. I'm going to go to Ur, and I'm going to call this one guy. And he's a perfect candidate because he's old, and his wife is old and can't have kids, but I'm going to enable her to have a child. And I'm going to start my own human family all over again. Just watch. They're my portion. They are my inheritance. And so God makes a covenant with Abraham to do all that stuff. And then he squeezes in the covenant language that through your seed, all of the nations that I just divorced will be blessed. I'm not forgetting about them permanently, but they are under judgment. They are exiled from me. And if they want to come back to me, they have to go through you. That's why they got to become part of the Israelite community. The Israelite community is the only one that has access to the truth about the true God. You must be in right relationship with God through them until we get the seed, who is Jesus. That's what Paul says in Galatians 3 and Galatians 6. I mean, all of these thoughts are connected. This is the tapestry of the biblical salvation story. It's just that, unfortunately, evangelicalism sucks the supernatural right out of it. But they have to retain the belief in God and Jesus and a Trinity and Satan and angels and demons. And we'll call it good. They don't really do anything. They fly around, and somehow it's okay to be a supernaturalist there, but not okay over here. I got news for you. Nothing we believe is going to appeal to a rationalist mind, to a materialist mind. Nothing we believe is normal and respectable to them. But for some reason we think, well, this isn't going to make people laugh at me, but this will. Why? Again, that's the uncomfortable thing for, a lot of people about unseen realm and some other things. But God is judging the gods in council. And some people will say, well, these are men, and God consults with them, or they consult with God, and then they're the judges and they make decisions. Well, that's nice, because if you look over in Psalm 89, this is Psalm 89, we get the same language. Let the heavens praise your wonders, O Lord, your faithfulness in the assembly of the holy ones. For who in the skies can be compared to the Lord? Who among the heavenly beings, there's a footnote here, this is B'nai Elim, the sons of God, or the sons of the gods. You could translate that too, but sons of God is, again, contextually, because we're dealing with one here, the way to translate it, a God greatly to be feared in the council of the holy ones. Well, here you have another divine council passage, sons of God who were Elohim back in Psalm 82. Here we have sons of God here in the council. And guess what? It's in the skies. Now, the last time I read my Bible, there weren't a bunch of Jewish elders ruling from the skies. Okay? They just aren't. Maybe I haven't looked closely enough, but I think I have. Doesn't work. Again, here's Psalm 82 again. So what in the world is Jesus doing? My view is that he was actually defending his deity. I don't need a drum roll for that. I mean, this is John. This is what John does. And it's sandwiched between I and the Father are one, and the Father is in me, and I'm in the Father. Why would Jesus undermine it in the middle? He wouldn't do that. John, as a writer, wouldn't do that. And the Pharisees certainly don't see it that way. So you've got everything in the context going against the dominant majority view. I'm just telling you, pick up a commentary on John, and it's going to land on the human view. And you're going to scratch your head and you go, why? Well, I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have to make sense, citizen. No, move along. There's nothing to see here in Psalm 82. I mean, that's essentially what you get. And it's because people haven't been forced to sort of deal with it. If you're in Old Testament, you're in a doctoral program or something like that, you're confronted with this on the first day. I mean, critics love to throw this stuff at you. And it's your field, so you have to read all the literature about it. People in New Testament or systematic theology or churches, they don't have to read it. They're lucky if they ever hear of it. It's just the way it is. So if we take the divine view, here's what I suggest. Here's John 10. You know what? We got I and the Father are one. He quotes Psalm 82 right here in the middle, and then he's going to reinforce the claim down here. So what is he doing? I would suggest this. See if I need this slide or not. I don't. He's not saying, I'm just like you. That's the mortal view. Think with me here. When Jesus makes the statement and he watches them start to pick up stones, he knows that he's pushed a button. And so he's going to draw on their knowledge of the text. He says, okay, calm down, fellas. Doesn't it say, I said, you are gods? And he quotes Psalm 82, verse 6. Now, he knows that they know the psalm. And because they know the psalm, they know immediately that, okay, sons of God in Psalm 82 are more than men. So the first stroke of Jesus is saying, your own scriptures tell you that there are sons of God that are more than men. And the scripture cannot be broken. It's not lying to you. And then he follows that by saying, the Father is in me, and I am in the Father. And he's already told them, I and the Father are one. So Jesus, I can just summarize the rest of what we're doing this morning. Jesus quotes Psalm 82 to make 2 points. One, there are sons of God in your own Bible who are more than men. They're supernatural beings. So he's put himself into the song. So he's saying, I'm more than a man, but I'm not just one of them. I'm not just one of that group, the sons of God. There's something about me that's different. And I've already told you what it is. I and the Father are one. The guy presiding over the council who is sentencing these Elohim to death, that's me. I and the Father are one. The Father is in me, and I am in the Father. He's sticking it to them. That's what he's doing. He's using their own text against themselves. And the scripture cannot be broken.
There you have it, guys. I mean, that was the first time I've ever heard it explained that way. Jesus's response to, that question, and him potentially about to be stoned because of him referencing himself as, as God, essentially. So, wow, man, that was a very, very great explanation from Dr. Michael Heiser that tied into the word Elohim, meaning multiple things, not just to refer to God, but also to those other divine beings that were in the heavenly council. Appreciate you guys sticking around. If you like the video, like and subscribe, help us grow the channel, push us further out into the algorithm. And with that being said, God bless you, and see you in the next video.